The animal spirits are stirring as America is on a prowl to reclaim that past glory. That confidence, of course, coming from, well, confidence that the walls that contained and neutered our prowess for individual achievement, well, they're going to come down. Of course, we're talking lower taxes, fewer regulations, infrastructure spending. They all will help reshape and change that overall environment. But ultimately, folks are going to have to show up. They're going to have to start businesses, start families. They have to reach for the stars. The economy ultimately gets a boost when we regain our swagger and that killer instinct, and I think it's starting to come back. You know, today's Empire State Manufacturing Index came out at its highest level since September 2014. That 18.7 reading in general business conditions. It's been climbing really nicely. Consider this. On the eve of the election back in October of last year, it was a negative 5.5. That's a big move since then. All aspects, by the way, of the report were encouraging, suggesting a major uptick in demand. These manufacturers don't make things if they don't think there's going to be demand for it. I will admit the lone sore spot was employment, which was only up fractionally, but maybe a big gain in the work week presages something later. You know, you give people more work, and then later on, more jobs, higher wages. Reported yesterday, the NFIB Small Business Index exploding big time. The more recent reports saw the pace cool, but it's evident that these companies are a lot more. Look at that spike on that chart, guys. These guys are excited, so much more than they were before the Great Recession even began. Now, the key components of that report underscore the urgency for these small businesses to start putting their money where their enthusiasm is. You know what that means? It means hiring and investing. So it feels like all the pieces are coming together. Here to discuss, Shah Gilani and Ed Conard. All right, Ed, tell me I'm wrong.
I don't think you're wrong. I think we've seen it in the stock market. I think we've seen it across the board in confidence indexes all soaring after President Trump was elected. And I think we're beginning to see it now in the real economy on Main Street, where people are shopping more and manufacturers are beginning to make more. So,
right, because isn't it the real deal? Like, you know, we talk about lower taxes and regulations and all that. Those are the key components. But for it to work, America has to buy into it, right? I mean, no economic scheme could work if it's not to a degree self-fulfilling.
And it's psychological, and the American public is buying into it. And if you look at the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the Small Business Optimism Index, which you cited, that's at 105.9, which is the highest it's been since December of 2004. So this is indicative of the animal spirits in terms of small businesses looking out there and seeing there's optimism ahead. There's, you know, with possibility of deregulations, prudent deregulation, possibility of greater access to capital if the banks are going to lend more, possibility of tax cuts. All of this stuff is very optimistic in terms of small business. And small business, we know, is what is the hiring engine in the United States. So this is all positive.
And Ed, big business. We've got to see big businesses build factories, hire people, not just buy back their stock.
yeah, well, yes, but I think we have to see the Trump administration follow through and Congress follow through with some substantial changes to our economic policy if we really want to see this happen in the long run. So people, I think, are optimistic about what a Republican Congress can do, but we're going to have to begin to do something
and to your point, we saw today what we saw last week when President Trump was speaking, and he reassured us that a big tax deal was coming. The market was up 20, 30 points, but it took off. And once they hear this, so we get that Pavlovian response, but how much time, all right? Because we all know when you get overly optimistic, it feels like that's when things go wrong.
And this may be what's happening here, when the market is certainly reflecting the optimism that's out there. Investor sentiment is very high. This is all based on the promises of the tax cuts, promises of deregulation, promises, promises, promises. Now the president and the administration has to fulfill those promises. Otherwise, this market could see a little backfilling.
Let me ask you guys real quick on this border adjustment tax, because you both like it. I think it's terrible. I really feel bad for those retailers that went in there today. Already they're losing their shirts to Amazon. They pay an effective tax rate. Target paid 34% in the last quarter. Best Buy 37%. Gap stores 45%. AutoZone 35%. So you got a company like Boeing saying, yeah, tax them, tax them. They pay 12%. You got GE saying, tax them. They got a tax rebate. They got back $700 million. So, Ed, I mean, tell me why I'm wrong, why this isn't a regressive tax that's going to destroy the retailers.
Yeah, because I think the exchange rate adjusts, and I expect it to adjust fully to compensate for the tax. And if you only tax imports, if you only tax that side, you'd have a big problem. You have to have a tax rebate on exports on the other side. And then the increase in demand for exports, and if there's any reduction in demand for imports, offset to adjust the exchange rate. I think most serious economists believe that that adjustment in the exchange rate will offset the negative effects that you're describing. But I think I certainly agree with the retailers that we want to move slowly and cautiously because it's a big radical change and there's risk involved in a change like that.
Gentlemen, thank you both very much. I really appreciate it.